Odette was the wife of military officer Sterling. When his childhood sweetheart, Elara, fell down the stairs and suffered a concussion, she stubbornly insisted that Odette was the one who had pushed her. Seeking justice for Elara, Sterling ignored Odette's desperate pleas and cries. He ordered the guards to forcefully drag her pregnant woman into solitary confinement. By the time she was released, she was covered in blood, and the baby in her womb was already gone. Sterling seemed remorseful, gently holding her hand and telling her that they were still young and would have another child soon. Odette only let out a cold laugh. She and Sterling would never have children again. Hey guys, today we're exploring Odette's incredible rebirth from a betrayed wife to a billionaire. It's a powerful story about escaping toxic relationships, spotting manipulation, and taking back your power. Let's dive in. She had intentionally punched her own stomach to miscarry the baby. She did it because she knew that both Sterling and the unborn child were ungrateful traitors. They would eventually back her into a corner for Elara's sake, leaving her to die without a proper grave. She had already lived one lifetime as a fish on a chopping block, completely at the mercy of others. In this life, she wanted to turn things around and rewrite her tragedy right from the beginning. Ma'am, the baby in your womb has suffered a severe impact, and there are signs of a miscarriage. You must stay on strict bed rest for the next few days, otherwise it will be very difficult to save the child. The voice echoing in her ears sounded fragmented. The pain radiating from her abdomen and throughout her entire body slowly brought her hazy consciousness back to reality. Bright red slogans painted on the green walls. The peeling paint on the door weren't these things from a lifetime ago? But hadn't she died already? She had died an agonizing death from a terminal illness after spending 5 years in prison, put there by Sterling. How could a dead person be seeing a scene from the past? Before she could fully process the situation, the hospital room door was forcefully pushed open. A young man in a military uniform, radiating a cold aura, stormed over to the hospital bed where she lay. Odette, why would you maliciously push Elara like that? Do you have any idea she almost lost her life? The words "I didn't" choked in her throat. What was the point of denying and explaining? In her previous life, she had denied it and explained that it wasn't her fault, but Sterling simply didn't believe her. He only believed Elara. Sterling roared at her, his face twisting with visible rage. Odette's gaze rested on his face, which looked decades younger. In his early 20s, Sterling was undeniably handsome. He had a high-bridged nose and striking, chiseled features. Even his fiery, glaring eyes were incredibly magnetic as they bore into her. In her past life, she had been madly, hopelessly in love with that face. She had harbored no regrets and no resentment, even as she humbled herself to the point of completely losing her own self-esteem for him. Yet, in the end, she had suffered a gruesome death. How incredibly naive she had been back then. Even after being framed by Elara and thrown into prison by Sterling, and even when she was struck with a terminal illness and had only a few days left to live, she had continued to pine for him. She had convinced herself that everything was solely Elara's scheme, and that Sterling had merely been deceived and was completely innocent. It wasn't until she found out she had terminal cancer and little time left that she asked her attending doctor to pass on a message, begging to see Sterling and her son one last time. But she was cruelly rejected. The pitying doctor told her that Sterling was busy taking Elara on an overseas vacation to fulfill her birthday wish, so he didn't have time to visit her. Instead, he wanted her to stay in prison and reflect on her mistakes. Her son also sent her a message, telling her to just go ahead and die to save him from embarrassment and spare his father, Sterling, any awkwardness. She was already severely ill, struggling to hold on to her last breath. Hearing that, she coughed up blood and collapsed. She never expected to be given a chance to start over. Seeing Sterling's youthful face once again, seeing the man she had loved for 15 years and who had betrayed her for 15 years, the love in her heart vanished completely. Actually, in her previous life, if only Sterling had been honest with her and told her directly that the person he loved was Elara, no matter how much she loved him, she definitely would have stepped aside to let them be together. However, Sterling never told her that he loved Elara. He always insisted that he only wanted to help Elara out of gratitude and that he only saw her as a biological sister. He used the guise of repaying a debt to righteously do despicable things with Elara. A tragic life spent paving the way for someone else, coupled with the agonizing despair right before her death, made it impossible for her to suppress the hatred surging within her. She stared intently at Sterling. If she could, she wanted to take a vicious bite out of him to vent the anger for her innocent and pitiful self from her previous life. Sterling didn't notice her unusual expression and continued roaring. "I never expected you to be such a vicious and shameless person, Odette. Don't think you can escape punishment just because you're pregnant. Let me tell you, I won't let you off the hook this time." Sterling's words made her let out a cold laugh. How exactly do you plan on not letting me off the hook? I want you to apologize to Elara. I want to lock you in solitary confinement so you can deeply reflect on your mistakes. Sure enough, it was the same old trick. In their previous life, Sterling had also laid out these two non-negotiable, mandatory conditions. 1. Apologize and admit her fault to Elara. 2. Be locked in solitary confinement to serve her punishment and reflect on her mistakes. Neither of these two conditions could be skipped. No one believed her explanations, and in the end, she was forced to apologize and admit her fault to Elara. She had thought that Sterling would spare her for the sake of their 5 years of marriage and the fact that she was pregnant, but she had overthought it. On the very day she was discharged from the hospital, Sterling ruthlessly ordered the guards to take her to solitary confinement. She cried and begged Sterling, telling him that she was pregnant, hoping he would spare her for the sake of the child in her womb and wait until later to punish her. However, Sterling was not swayed in the slightest. He said she was wicked and unrepentant, so he had to make her pay the price for her actions to ensure she remembered it well and never did it again. For 7 days in solitary confinement without seeing the light of day, the only thing she could do every day was count the numbers, waiting for the day she would be let out. During those 7 days, Sterling never once came to visit her, and the guards also forgot that there was a pregnant woman like her in the cell. It wasn't until Sterling returned from taking Elara to the capital for medical treatment that he discovered she was still locked in the cell. An ordinary person would die after 7 days without food or water. By the time she was released, she had already fallen into a deep coma. Thanks to her sheer will to live, she didn't completely die. She was rushed to emergency care for several consecutive days before they finally snatched her life back from the hands of the Grim Reaper. Because she hadn't had a single drop of water or a grain of rice for 7 days, her bodily functions were severely damaged, leading to chronic stomach issues. This was probably one of the reasons why she later developed cancer and died. When she was released, Sterling had shown remorse and treated her very well. She once thought that he loved her, and because of that love, she had forgiven him. But later, Elara had told her that Sterling only treated her well because he was afraid she would report him to his superiors. After all, if she died in the solitary cell too, lives lost in one body, Sterling's career would be severely impacted. She hadn't believed Elara's words, and thus fell into a vicious cycle time and time again. In her previous life, she had been a pathetic fool who, right up until her death, deluded herself into believing that Sterling loved her and that he was merely being deceived by Elara. In this life, she knew the truth completely and would never be mesmerized by Sterling's facade again, because no true love would ever bring about such endless pain. She looked at Sterling and enunciated every word clearly. I am not wrong, I will not apologize, and you have no right to lock me up. Hearing this, Sterling flew into a rage. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. Since you are being so stubborn, don't blame me. With veins bulging on his forehead, Sterling shouted outside, Take Odette to solitary confinement to reflect on her actions. She was dragged away by the guards toward the cell. In her past life, she had valued her dignity and, wanting to save face for Sterling, had chosen to remain silent and let the guards take her to solitary confinement. In this life, she wasn't going to do anything so stupid again. The moment the guards laid their hands on her, she started screaming, Murder! Sterling wants to kill his devoted wife and the unborn child in my womb, all for his mistress, Elara. Help me. I'm innocent. Sterling had never expected her to completely disregard her pride and cry out her grievances like that. The people around them all turned to look, whispering and gossiping among themselves, causing him to lose all face. Left with no other choice, Sterling resorted to covering her mouth with his own hand. Fueled by hatred, she bit down hard on the hand, stifling her. Fresh blood seeped into her mouth, carrying a strong metallic odor. She saw Sterling grimace in pain. Did it hurt? Of course it hurt. After all, he was bleeding. Yet, how could this pain even compare to the agony she had endured in her previous life? She was escorted to the solitary cell under the watchful eyes of a crowd. Those witnessing the scene began to gossip animatedly. What did Odette do wrong to be thrown into solitary confinement like that? I heard she pushed Elara, causing her to be severely injured. That's why Commander Sterling is putting justice before his own family and forcing Odette to reflect on her actions. Oh, so that's how it is? Then she brought this upon herself. You can't really say that. Odette has a gentle temperament. She doesn't seem like such a vicious person. Not to mention, she's currently pregnant. Look, her forehead is even bleeding. Isn't Commander Sterling being a bit too heartless, treating his own wife like this for an outsider? Exactly. Commander Sterling cares way too much about that Elara. Commander Sterling is a man who values loyalty and righteousness. He clearly separates gratitude and grudges. He's just repaying a debt to Elara. Even so, It's too much. Odette is pregnant. Under the law, even pregnant women who commit murder aren't immediately sentenced to death, let alone for a minor dispute like this. Commander Sterling is far too biased toward Elara. The surrounding gossip made Sterling's face turn pale. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that someone as gentle and demure as her would make him lose face to such an extent. After she was thrown into the solitary cell, he ordered the guards to lock the door. Odette, I didn't expect you to be such a shrew of a woman. Originally, I was only going to lock you up for 7 days, but seeing how you are now, 7 days is clearly not enough. You can stay in there and reflect on your actions for half a month. Leaving those words behind, Sterling stormed off in a fury. The cell door slammed shut, plunging the inside into pitch-black darkness. In her previous life, she had endured 7 horrifying days in here, slipping into a coma on the brink of death. Later on, she had painstakingly nursed her body back to health, only to be framed by Elara once again. Giving birth prematurely to that vile spawn in her previous life, she had endured every kind of pain, hemorrhaging so severely that her uterus had to be removed. She had given all her love to the only child in her womb, but that vile spawn turned out to be just as vicious and shameless as its father, Sterling. It even liked Elara more than its own biological mother. Thinking of the agonizing pain she had endured in her past life, a cold smile crept onto her lips. She would not give this vicious and shameless spawn a chance to survive. She clenched her hands into fists and delivered heavy blow after blow to her lower abdomen. Half an hour later, her agonizing, earth-shattering cries rang out. The people who heard the noise immediately ran over and opened the cell door, only to see her lying on the floor, covered in blood. She had miscarried. She was rushed to the hospital in a bloody state. Sterling, who had been sitting by Elara's hospital bed, sprang up when he heard the guards report that she had miscarried and was taken to emergency care. He rushed out of the room, completely oblivious to the triumphant smile in Elara's eyes as she lay there. After the procedure was completed, she was wheeled out of the operating room. The first thing she saw was Sterling standing outside the door, his face looking grim. He took a step forward, wanting to grab her hand, but she gifted him a single phrase, "Get lost." Sterling took 2 steps back, staring blankly as the nurse wheeled her out of his sight. After the nurse finished setting up her IV drip, Sterling walked into the hospital room once again. Standing there, a rare look of sorrow appeared on his face. Was he grieving for the lost child? How could that be? In her previous life, that vile spawn had been entirely devoted to Elara, constantly claiming that if it weren't for its existence, Sterling would have divorced her long ago to marry Elara. It was supposedly because of the child that Sterling couldn't bear to do it, maintaining their nominal marriage. Therefore, with the vile spawn gone, Sterling should rightfully be rejoicing. She watched Sterling slowly walk over to the hospital bed. Her gaze toward him was indifferent, holding neither joy nor sorrow. Sterling reached out to touch her, but perhaps because her expression was too cold, he retracted his hand. In a dry voice, he said, "Odette, I didn't expect this to happen with the baby either. Get some good rest. We will still have children in the future." Have children? Was this supposed to comfort her? After all, the commotion of her miscarrying in the solitary cell was so loud that it had definitely spread throughout the entire military district by now. Sterling commanded his troops with strict discipline, earning people's respect, but to be so heartless toward the wife who shared his bed who knew how the people outside would gossip about him. Not to mention, her miscarriage also involved another woman, and Sterling's blatant favoritism toward Elara was obvious to everyone. She figured the rumors must have already started outside. Well, she would certainly add fuel to the fire to make those rumors blaze even more fiercely. Just as she was deep in thought, a nurse hurriedly pushed the door open, looking for Sterling. "Commander Sterling, Comrade Elara fell and fainted." According to the nurse, upon hearing the news of Odette's miscarriage, Elara had wanted to visit. However, her body was too weak, and she collapsed in the hallway before she could take more than a few steps. Elara always loved using this trick to lure Sterling away. In her previous life, this trick was always effective, but this time, perhaps it would backfire. Anxious about Elara, Sterling left. Lying on the bed, Odette burst into loud, wailing tears, her face streaming with them. Hearing her cries, the nurses, doctors, and the people in the neighboring hospital rooms all rushed over. Knowing she had lost her child, everyone kindly tried to comfort her. Wiping away her tears, she began to recount the story to the nurses, doctors, and the gossiping patients. She told them about everything Elara and Sterling had done. Ever since Elara had appeared, the mind of Sterling, the man whose name was on the marriage certificate next to hers, was no longer with her. Sterling had arranged a job for Elara, and even gave her more than half of his salary to spend. Elara clung to Sterling all day long, deliberately provoking Odette to cause arguments between her and Sterling. Furthermore, Elara would constantly find excuses to call him away. Even in the dead of night, she shamelessly used the excuse of being scared of thunderstorms to call Sterling over to stay with her the entire night. Elara had even arrogantly threatened to kill the unborn child in Odette's womb just to force her to divorce Sterling. Everything Odette said about what Elara had done was the absolute truth. The people in the military district had actually seen it all. They just hadn't expected that those two would secretly share a room late at night. Consequently, the way everyone looked at the situation completely changed. On top of that, now that Odette had lost her baby, Sterling completely ignored her, the woman who had just suffered a miscarriage, without a single word of concern. Yet, for Elara, he was at her beck and call. Everyone saw this plain as day. The nurses, doctors, and patients were absolutely indignant upon hearing this. Looking at their expressions, Odette knew that the affair between Sterling and Elara would soon spread throughout the military compound. Sterling was summoned by his superiors. He explained to the leadership that he and Elara were completely innocent and that he was only helping her out of gratitude. The leaders trusted Sterling, but the outside rumors were just too fierce. The commanding officer, who was Sterling's old superior and thought highly of him, reminded him to be mindful of his reputation and to keep his distance from Elara. When Sterling returned to the hospital, a dark cloud seemed to hang over his entire demeanor. As soon as he closed the door, he warned her, "Odette, you almost ruined me. Because of your capriciousness, I was summoned by the leadership. Do you have any idea how much this will affect my future promotion?" She smirked. It was a good thing that it would affect him. In her previous life, she had endured so much agonizing pain and humiliation, while Sterling and Elara lived a carefree and comfortable life. After experiencing such profound trauma, how could she possibly let him have smooth sailing like in her previous life? Since she had been reborn, she had to do things that made her enemies uncomfortable, right? Sterling had no idea what she was thinking. He still thought she loved him deeply, cared about his future, and would obey him without regret. He instructed her, "From now on, you must clear up every rumor outside. You have to let everyone know that Elara and I only have a brother-sister relationship. Are you two really like brother and sister? As far as I know, you two don't share a single drop of blood, do you?" she retorted. Seeing her mocking smile, Sterling found it irritating and continued, "If I had any other intentions toward Elara, why would I have married you?" In her previous life, he had used this exact line to brainwash her, and she had foolishly believed him. Now, hearing that familiar explanation again, she couldn't help but burst into laughter. Sterling was enraged by her laughter. "Odette, now is not the time for your jealous tantrums. It's all because you were disobedient that I ended up in this situation. I'm warning you to know your place. If you continue to fail to see the big picture like this, I will divorce you." Divorce was exactly what she had been hoping for. She immediately nodded. "Fine, let's get a divorce. We can do the paperwork right now." Sterling never expected her to say such a thing. His expression completely froze. "What kind of game are you playing?" I'm not playing games," she said. "I'd rather just get a divorce than have to share my husband with another woman. We can go our separate ways and find our own futures." Hearing her say that, Sterling became extremely furious. "What do you mean, Odette? Ours is a military marriage. You can't just get a divorce simply because you want one. So what? Do you plan on wronging yourself for the rest of your life? Are you sure you want to let your good little sister be a third party for the rest of her life?" The slang term third party didn't exist back then. Sterling was stunned. "What is a third party? What the hell is a third party?" He pressed her for an answer. Of course, she wasn't going to explain it to him in detail. "Sterling, if you want me to believe you, from now on, you are not allowed to have any contact with Elara. Can you do that?" To her surprise, Sterling actually agreed. "From now on, I will leave all of Elara's matters for you to handle. I promise I won't secretly contact her anymore." This change was something that hadn't happened in her previous life. Sterling, weighing the pros and cons and choosing to compromise for the sake of his promotion, was entirely within her expectations. It was just that Elara didn't possess the same high level of self-awareness as he did. Odette believed that if Elara couldn't see Sterling, she would soon resort to playing dirty tricks. And she was actually looking forward to Elara making a move. After all, she had been reborn. One way or another, she had to claim back some of the grievances and agonizing pain she had suffered in her past life, right? Elara had no idea that Sterling had decided to keep his distance from her for the sake of his career. She continued to feign illness, lying in the hospital and playing the pitiful victim just like in their previous life, waiting for Sterling to visit. After waiting for several days without Sterling showing up, Elara couldn't take it anymore. She asked countless people to pass on messages, exaggerating her condition to force Sterling to come. When Sterling heard the news that Elara was coughing up blood, his heart burned with anxiety. However, the leadership had issued a strict order that he didn't dare to disobey, so he ultimately had to come find Odette. Elara was absolutely certain that Sterling would come visit her. In the end, she only waited to see Odette instead of the man of her dreams. Confirming there were no outsiders around, Elara maliciously asked her, "What are you doing here?" "I came to see you, of course. To see what kind of demonic tricks you're pulling." Odette took a stroll around the hospital room. "Didn't they say you were dying? Look at you, with your rosy lips and pearly whites, you seem perfectly healthy. Elara, don't you think this fake illness trick is a bit too outdated?" Being exposed by Odette, Elara didn't bother pretending anymore. "Odette, the feeling of losing a child isn't pleasant, is it? I was the one who killed your baby, but Brother Sterling doesn't feel any heartache for you at all. He only believes me. Because of me, he has no choice but to wrong you, his legal and rightful wife. You must be feeling pretty miserable inside, aren't you? You're overthinking it." Odette smiled calmly. "As long as it keeps Sterling away from a disgusting woman like you, what is losing a child compared to that? Elara, you probably don't know this, but Sterling is never going to come see you again." Elara was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like. Right now, there are rumors going around outside that you and Sterling are having an affair. For the sake of his reputation, Sterling has to keep his distance from you from now on to avoid suspicion." Hearing her words, Elara was stunned into silence. "You, Odette, what did you do?" "Don't be in such a rush. I'll explain it to you slowly." Odette walked over to the side of the hospital bed, looking down at Elara. "Elara, I know your filthy intentions. Didn't you want to kill the child in my womb to drive a wedge between Sterling and me? You want to become his woman, don't you? Therefore, I took the initiative to grant your wish. To tell you the truth, I intentionally killed the baby in my womb myself. And the news of you and Sterling having an affair, I was the one who intentionally spread that too. How is that possible? Are you crazy?" Elara knew how much Odette cherished the child in her womb, how much she loved Sterling, and how much she valued his reputation. Now, Odette had intentionally killed her own unborn baby and tarnished Sterling's reputation. Elara couldn't fathom it, and at the same time, her blood boiled with rage. She knew just how severe the consequences of Odette's actions would be for both her and Sterling. "You shameless woman! You dared to use your own flesh and blood to frame me? Your heart is too wicked. Compared to you, it's just a grain of sand against a boulder." "Elara," Odette replied. "From now on, I want you to taste the pain I once endured." "Is that so? Then let's see who dies at whose hands." After saying that, Elara raised her hands and slapped her own face hard twice. Slap! Slap! 2 resounding smacks echoed in the room. Both of Elara's cheeks immediately swelled up. Elara was truly ruthless to herself. The corners of her mouth were already bleeding. Licking the bright red blood with her tongue, Elara glared at Odette with venomous resentment and screamed, "Odette is hitting me. Help!" Saying that, she jumped out of bed barefoot and dashed toward the door. But before Elara could even take 2 steps, she found herself unable to move. From behind, Odette grabbed Elara's hair and yanked her back forcefully. Just as Elara had slapped herself to frame Odette, the hand gripping her hair used every ounce of Odette's strength. Odette could see the fierce, agonized expression on Elara's face. Amidst Elara's piercing screams, Odette grabbed her hair and smashed her head hard against the wall, over and over again. Elara never expected Odette to actually get physical. After all, Odette used to be a good person with a gentle and kind nature, always afraid of trouble. Odette's violent smashing made Elara shriek, and it wasn't long before the pain caused her to pass out. Looking at the unconscious Elara on the floor, Odette stood up and walked out. She rubbed her eyes a few times, and soon her face was streaming with tears. The nurses in the hallway, having heard the commotion, were rushing over. Seeing Odette's pitiful, tear-stained state, they stopped and asked, "Odette, what's wrong? Did someone bully you?" The nurses who ran over were all familiar faces. During her hospitalization for the miscarriage, Odette had received a lot of sympathy from the doctors and nurses. Furthermore, Elara wasn't actually sick but kept occupying a hospital bed and faking illness, which thoroughly disgusted the medical staff. Odette cried breathlessly, "I'm dead. I'm definitely dead. Elara," she slapped her own face to frame me, and now she's pretending to have fainted on the floor. "What? She slapped herself and is faking a fainting spell?" The nurses exchanged glances. Elara's character was already questionable. Relying on Sterling's protection, she had always been arrogant and domineering in the hospital. The nurses already hated her condescending attitude, and now that they knew she was the homewrecker, stepping into Odette and Sterling's marriage, they despised her even more. Odette continued to cry. "What should I do? What am I supposed to do? There's no way I can clear my name now. If Sterling finds out, he'll definitely blame me. I'm dead for sure. That's too much. Don't be afraid, Odette. We'll testify for you. The nurses immediately took her side. Thank you all. But she's still lying on the floor, pretending to be unconscious. How should we handle this? We'll go in with you and take a look. Escorted by the nurses, Odette returned to the hospital room. Elara was still lying unconscious on the floor. The nurses looked at her with utter disgust. All right, stop pretending. Get up. Being genuinely comatose, Elara naturally didn't respond. Odette wiped her tears, walked over, squatted down, and reached out to touch her. Stop pretending. Get up. As Odette touched Elara, she forcefully pressed the large sewing needle hidden in her hand, stabbing it hard into Elara's waist. It was a needle she had intentionally brought along to deal with Elara, measuring about 2 to 3 inches long. Needless to say, the effect of having such a long needle pierce into one's flesh was agonizing. Elara, who had been in a coma, let out a scream of pain. The moment Elara opened her eyes, Odette was quick, instantly pulling the needle out and hiding it back up her sleeve. The excruciating pain caused Elara to shoot up into a sitting position. Her eyes met Odette's unfriendly smile. Hatred and fury made Elara raise her hand without a second thought, slapping Odette squarely across the face. A nurse standing nearby immediately grabbed Elara's hand tightly. Are you crazy? Seeing this, the other nurses rushed forward and pinned Elara down. Restrained and unable to move, Elara was dumbfounded. She was usually a scheming person. After a brief moment of shock, she immediately reverted to a pitiful, sympathy-inducing appearance. She complained to the nurses, pinning her down. Odette hit me. She slapped my face, grabbed my hair, and smashed my head against the wall. She intentionally injured me. I want to call the police and have her arrested. Elara was absolutely certain that telling the truth would gain their support. Who would have thought that the nurses would just look at her with eyes full of contempt? Enough, Comrade Elara. Stop pretending. One of them said, We know you are staging this whole thing to frame Comrade Odette. Having such a mindset is unacceptable. You need to correct it immediately. I'm not pretending. My head really hurts excruciatingly, and my face hurts too. The spot on her waist where Odette had stabbed her with the needle naturally hurt as well. Elara anxiously explained, but no one believed her. The nurses all stood on Odette's side. Don't be afraid, Odette. We will definitely testify for you. This entire thing was staged by Elara herself. Elara's head really did hurt, and her face really did hurt, but no one believed her. The nurses even threatened to call the police and brought out Elara's ridiculous medical records. You aren't even sick, yet you're faking an illness and occupying a hospital bed. We will definitely report the truth. Elara had to back down. She could manipulate Sterling simply because he felt sorry for her and liked her. However, these other people were neither her parents nor her relatives, so naturally, they wouldn't coddle her. What was right and what was wrong was obvious to any outsider looking in. Elara also knew that if she blew the matter out of proportion, the consequences would be detrimental to her. Therefore, she gritted her teeth and swallowed her anger. Surrounded by the nurses, Odette walked out. She casually turned her head to look at Elara, flashing a provocative smile. Elara, this is only the beginning. What comes next will be much more spectacular. Having dealt Elara a minor punishment, Odette returned home in a relaxed and cheerful mood. She discovered that a busy man like Sterling was, surprisingly, at home. He had bought the oranges and candies she liked. Seeing her return, he immediately asked, How is Elara? He really was paying close attention to her. If he wasn't afraid of it affecting his career promotion, Sterling would have probably run to the hospital to visit Elara long ago. Odette replied expressionlessly, She's doing great. After all, she still had the energy to slander and frame me. What do you mean? Sterling froze. I followed your wishes and went to visit Elara. I even bought her fruits. In the end, Elara was ungrateful. She threw the fruits away, slapped her own face, and faked fainting just to frame me. If the nurses at the door hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes, I would have truly been wrongfully accused by her today. How is that possible? Disbelief was clearly written all over Sterling's face. If you don't believe me, you can go to the hospital and ask the nurses. It wasn't just one person who saw her framing me with their own eyes. It was 4 people. Sterling was rarely silent. Why would she frame you? You don't know? Odette looked at Sterling and retorted. Sterling shook his head. Odette sneered. Elara said that I don't deserve to be your wife, and that she is the one who deserves it, Odette replied. Sterling, who had been looking serious, immediately changed his expression upon hearing her say this. Not this again. Odette, why won't you ever learn your lesson? How many times have I told you? Elara and I only have a brother-sister relationship. It is absolutely impossible for anything to happen between us. Ha ha, Odette laughed inwardly. But you two aren't even biological siblings. Regardless, I act with a clear conscience, Sterling retorted. He even warned her. Just know your place, and stop causing more trouble for me. Seemingly realizing that his tone was too harsh with her, he softened his voice. Odette, just be good and listen to me. What happened with the baby was my fault. I apologize to you. We will still have children in the future. He thought that allowing her to bear his children was the greatest favor he could bestow upon her. Little did he know, her heart had completely changed long ago. She would absolutely never have a child for Sterling. He could keep dreaming. After having her head smashed against the wall by Odette, Elara had genuinely suffered a concussion and was hospitalized for several days. During those few days, she didn't forget to play her demonic tricks. She used the hospital phone to call Sterling several times and even had someone deliver a letter to him. In the end, she completely failed to get Sterling to come. Panic set in for Elara. She discharged herself from the hospital and went to find Sterling in person. With tears welling in her eyes, Elara knocked on the door of Odette and Sterling's home. What met her eyes was the sight of Sterling having lunch with Odette. Seeing Sterling place a piece of ribs into Odette's bowl, Elara couldn't believe it. She sobbed, "Brother Sterling, do you not want me anymore?" Looking at Elara's swollen face and her sickly, fragile appearance, how could Sterling not be moved? "Elara, how could I not want you? I've just been too busy lately." Elara burst into tears and threw herself into Sterling's arms. "I thought you didn't want me anymore. Brother Sterling, I was so scared you didn't want me. You promised my parents that you would take good care of me. Boo-hoo." Elara's parents had done Sterling a great favor. At the mention of her parents, a flash of guilt crossed Sterling's face. Odette had thought Elara would take this opportunity to accuse her of the beating, driving a wedge in Odette and Sterling's relationship. But as it turned out, Elara had wised up. She didn't say a single word about Odette dealing with her at the hospital. She only reminisced about the past, stirring up Sterling's emotions. Finally, she tearfully apologized to Odette right in front of him. "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry. My presence has put you in a difficult position. Don't worry. Once my health recovers, I will move somewhere else. From now on, you won't have to worry about me affecting the relationship between you and Brother Sterling." After saying that, Elara even knelt down in front of Odette, kowtowing repeatedly and begging for her forgiveness. She had to admit, Elara's tactic of playing the soft and vulnerable victim was indeed very effective. Sterling was heartbroken to the extreme. He immediately rushed over to help Elara up. "Your sister-in-law isn't a petty person. Elara, you're not going anywhere. You'll stay right here so it's convenient for me to take care of you." Relying on Sterling's hands, Elara stood up. The two of them emotionally recounted their past. Odette couldn't bear to listen anymore, so she stood up and left. She understood perfectly well that Elara had gotten smarter. Elara knew she couldn't rush to accuse Odette right now. She was using this soft approach to make Sterling feel sorry for her, and later, she would reuse her old tricks to deal with Odette. Odette went out for a walk for a few hours. When she returned, Elara was nowhere to be seen. Sterling was sitting alone in the living room. Seeing her come back, he spoke up. "Odette, let's talk." "Sure." She nodded and sat down opposite him. "Talk about what?" "About Elara," Sterling said, taking her hand. "Odette, my feelings for Elara are truly just that of a brother. You know, her parents did me a great favor. I have nothing to repay them with. They only had Elara as their daughter, so I can only repay it through her." "Fine. If you want to repay her, I won't stop you," Odette replied. "Whatever you want to do with Elara, you don't need to inform me. I don't care." "Odette, don't say such angry things," he said. "I know you have the wrong idea and think Elara and I have an inappropriate relationship. I swear, I truly only see Elara as a sister. The only person I want to spend the rest of my life with is you." In her previous life, if she had heard this profound confession, she would have definitely fallen for it and foolishly loved him without any regrets or resentment. Unfortunately, she was no longer the foolish Odette from her past life who only knew about romantic love. She pulled her hand back. "I understand what you mean. Is there anything else?" Seeing that she wasn't moved by his vows, Sterling was very surprised. He grabbed her hand again and said sincerely, "Odette, I'm about to go on a mission and won't be back for a while. After I leave, please get along with Elara. Elara promised she would listen to you from now on. Please fulfill your duties as a sister-in-law. I'm leaving Elara in your care. Wait for my return." These words sounded like a dying man's last request. She raised an eyebrow. "All right. I will definitely take very good care of your dear sister, Elara." Sterling led his team on a mission down south. Before leaving, he repeatedly instructed her and Elara on various things, making sure to tell them they had to get along. Both she and Elara reached a tacit understanding and nodded in agreement. Getting along was impossible. She knew Elara wouldn't give up, and neither would she. After Sterling returned from his mission, she and Elara would definitely determine a winner, and a loser, either Elara would die, or Odette would perish. The looks she and Elara exchanged both carried that firm determination. On the first day of Sterling's departure, she and Elara treated each other very amicably. Elara took the initiative to call her sister-in-law, and proactively came over to help her clean the house and cook. On the second day after Sterling left, Elara bought her a set of clothes and a pair of shoes, and even invited her to the movies. She affectionately linked arms with Odette, constantly calling her sister-in-law, letting the other people in the military compound witness the closeness between them with their own eyes. They went out and came back together, supporting each other like a true pair of sisters-in-law, as if their previous conflicts had never happened. On the 10th day of Sterling's absence, Elara knocked on her door early in the morning, bringing over breakfast she had bought. "Sister-in-law, I have the day off today. Can we go for a picnic by the river?" "Sure," Odette happily agreed. Elara had already prepared lunch and snacks. She affectionately linked arms with Odette as they walked to the gate. Whenever they bumped into acquaintances, Elara would take the initiative to greet them, telling them she was going on a picnic by the river with Odette. Just like that, after announcing it to more than 10 people, she and Elara took their food and hopped onto a cruiser bicycle, heading straight for the small river. When they were almost there, Odette said her stomach hurt and she needed to find a place to use the restroom, so she left for a moment. By the time she returned to the riverbank, Elara had been waiting for her there for over an hour. Impatience showed on Elara's face as she paced anxiously in place. Her eyes were filled with venomous resentment, and she was muttering something under her breath. Odette cleared her throat. "Elara, I've kept you waiting." Seeing Odette, Elara immediately changed her expression. The venomous look from a moment ago vanished, as if Odette had just imagined it. "Sister-in-law, the scenery here is so beautiful. I borrowed a camera. Let me take a few pictures of you." Odette happily agreed, standing by the riverbank to let Elara take a few photos. Several times, Elara let out joyful laughter and then lunged toward her, but Odette nimbly dodged every time. Odette laughed heartily, while Elara's smile grew colder and colder. After failing to tackle her several times, Elara took the initiative to lay out the picnic mat and arrange the food. She spread the mat on the riverbank, purposely choosing the seat facing the water for herself, leaving the side closest to the water's edge for Odette. "I'm so hungry. Sister-in-law, come eat." Elara enthusiastically handed the food to Odette. Odette didn't take it. Instead, she looked straight at her and said, "Spit it out. What is your goal?" "What goal would I have?" Elara tried to force a smile. Odette lowered her voice. "I know that just now, you were looking for an opportunity to push me into the river and then jump in yourself, pretending that I was the one who pushed you. After failing, you resorted to this trick. Let me guess what you are planning to do next." Odette looked at Elara's pale face. "You put something in the food to scheme against me, didn't you? Elara, did you really think I was that stupid? That after knowing you are a venomous snake, I wouldn't have my guard up at all?" With her mask torn off, Elara stopped pretending. "So you found out? I thought I could fool you for a few days. I didn't expect you to be so smart. Odette, since you already know everything, I won't hide it anymore. Today is the day you die." Throwing those words behind, she lunged at Odette. Odette was sitting with her back to the river. Elara lunged forward, shoving Odette so that both of them tumbled into the water. This was the exact trick Elara had used to frame Odette in their previous life. In their past life, after luring Odette to the riverbank, she pushed Odette into the water to stage a murder, making it look like Odette was the one trying to kill her. Odette knew how to swim, but Elara did not. Not long after falling into the river, Elara's arranged accomplices arrived to save her, and then helped testify that Odette had tried to murder her. Everyone believed Elara. Sterling also believed her words. That was why he had righteously placed justice above his own family and thrown Odette into prison. In this life, Elara was framing her a full 3 years earlier than in their previous life. If she were the Odette of the past life, she would have definitely died for real. But she was no longer the Odette from her past life. The moment Elara invited her to the riverbank, Odette already knew what she was planning to do. She knew Elara had found witnesses to falsely accuse her, so she decided to indulge Elara's death wish. As they fell into the river, Odette immediately grabbed Elara's head and shoved her underwater, forcing her to swallow mouthfuls of water. When Elara choked on the water to the point her eyes rolled back and she fell unconscious, Odette grabbed her hair and smashed her head violently against a sharp rock on the riverbank, blow after blow. Elara's beautiful face was covered in blood, but it still wasn't enough. In her previous life, Odette had her uterus removed, leaving her unable to bear children for the rest of her life. How could she ever forget that agony? Since she was starting over, Elara also had to taste the feeling of losing her uterus. An iron rod Odette had prepared in advance by the riverbank was thrust straight through Elara's lower body. Odette watched the fresh blood gradually dye the water red, then satisfactorily grabbed Elara's hair, swam to the shore, and screamed for help. The witnesses Elara had arranged showed up right on time. Elara was rushed to the hospital. Odette lay on the riverbank, a cold smile forming on her lips. Next, it was time to watch Sterling's performance. Sterling didn't return until a week later. Upon receiving the terrible news of Elara's injury, he rushed straight to the hospital. Elara had survived the emergency surgery, but just like Odette in her previous life, she had lost the chance to ever become a mother. She was even more tragic than Odette had been in her past life. Her face was ruined, covered in uneven, indented scars. Elara gripped Sterling tightly and wailed, accusing Odette of trying to murder her. Elara had waited for this day for a very long time, but the outcome wasn't what she had expected. She was disfigured, while Odette remained completely unscathed. When Elara woke up, it would be a lie to say she didn't regret it. She couldn't understand why Odette had fought back so fiercely. She didn't understand how she had gone from being the perpetrator to becoming the victim. With things having reached this point, Elara knew she had no way back. Elara was absolutely determined to bite back at her, determined to make her pay. She was determined to seize upon Sterling's sense of gratitude, to force him to take responsibility for her. Sure enough, upon hearing that Odette had reduced Elara to this state, Sterling flew into an uncontrollable rage. Just like in their previous life, Elara had found a few accomplices and key witnesses. These accomplices unanimously testified on Elara's behalf against Odette. They spoke with absolute certainty, claiming that after Sterling left, Odette had constantly bullied Elara. Elara, wanting to win Odette's favor, had bought her clothes and shoes, proactively done chores, and even invited her to a picnic, hoping to change her attitude, only to unexpectedly face Odette's vicious attack. They claimed to have seen with their own eyes Odette holding Elara underwater. With full evidence and witnesses, Odette was branded a criminal. Just like in her previous life, there was only one path left to take, going to prison. Sterling was furious at her viciousness and shamelessness. His heart ached for Elara's current predicament, and he promised her that he would definitely seek justice. Meanwhile, Odette stayed at home, waiting for Sterling's thunderous wrath. During the days she waited for him to return and make things difficult for her, she took the opportunity to pack her luggage. She sold most of the furniture in the house, even selling off the bicycle entirely. She sewed all the money into the lining of her clothes. A detailed plan had been mapped out, just waiting for the moment to sever ties with Sterling. The door was violently kicked open, and Sterling strode in. He grabbed her by the collar, lifting her off her feet. "Odette, why did you do this?" She forcefully pried Sterling's fingers away. "Sterling, if I told you that none of this had anything to do with me, that it was all Elara's scheme, would you believe me?" "Shut up." Sterling, of course, didn't believe her. So furious, he cursed. "Odette, Elara doesn't know how to swim, but you do. Would someone who can't swim be stupid enough to scheme against someone who can?" Just like in their previous life, Sterling firmly believed that Elara wouldn't take such a risk. He angrily questioned her. Furthermore, if Elara was scheming against you, why would she ruin her own face and lose the ability to have children for the rest of her life? She sneered. "That's very easy to explain." Her scheme failed, so she made a mistake. "You're still being so stubborn even at this point. Odette, do you think I have to protect you no matter what? That I have to unconditionally cover for you? Do you know that doing this is a crime? You're going to prison." "Of course I know. But I wasn't the one who caused all this. Elara brought this upon herself." "You still refuse to repent. Odette, you are more vicious and shameless than I thought, and more out of your mind than I thought. Since you were so dead set on doing something evil, don't blame me. I won't let you off the hook this time." "Fine, I'll wait." In her previous life, it had ended exactly like this. She had long since stopped expecting anything else, yet her heart still gave a sharp twinge of pain. "So, how do you plan to punish me, Sterling?" Seeing her indifferent attitude, Sterling violently kicked the sofa. "Go to the hospital and sincerely apologize to Elara." "I won't apologize." "Then wait to go to prison." "Let me tell you, Odette, I absolutely do not need a deranged woman like you as a wife. Once you're in prison, I will divorce you." "Fine, that's exactly what I want." She pulled out the divorce papers she had already prepared. "Sign it. Let's go get a divorce right now." Sterling looked at the papers, then at her. You prepared this in advance? You knew I would ask for a divorce? Why wouldn't I? There's no reason not to. Sign it." Sterling, a man who had never suffered a loss in front of her, was now trembling with anger. He took the pen, he signed the papers, and threw them right at her. "As you wish." She bent down to pick up the divorce papers. By the time she stood up, Sterling had already strode away. Before reaching the door, he didn't forget to threaten her. "Just you wait. The police will come looking for you soon enough." She let out a cold laugh, took the divorce papers, and headed straight to the courthouse. An hour later, she walked out the doors holding their finalized divorce certificates. The smooth divorce process made her breathe a sigh of relief. Now, all that was left was to wait for the police's inquiry. She wasn't afraid in the slightest. After all, Elara wasn't the only one capable of finding witnesses to testify on her behalf. Someone who had already lived through a past life like her had them too, and she had prepared far more thoroughly than Elara. The police didn't come looking for her. Instead, she took the initiative to bring the evidence and report the case herself. Her evidence was airtight. Elara knew Odette could swim, so she had prepared food laced with sleeping pills for her. Her original goal was for Odette to fall unconscious and drown in the river. It was just that she didn't expect Odette to see right through her scheme, forcing Elara to change her plan at the last minute and stage an accident where Odette was the one pushing her into the water. Knowing Elara's vicious mindset, Odette had found several witnesses in advance. They were the nurses from the hospital. They had promptly taken the drug-laced food Elara prepared for testing. They saw with their own eyes Elara pushing Odette into the river, and they also verified that Elara had personally purchased a large quantity of sleeping pills. As for why Elara suffered such severe injuries, that was because she didn't know how to swim, and her luck was exceptionally terrible. She accidentally hit a hard rock that ruined her face, and her uterus was destroyed by a rusty iron rod floating in the river. Rocks and iron couldn't speak, nor did they leave fingerprints to prove that someone had intentionally harmed her. This time, Elara was forced to swallow her bitter pill and suffer her losses in silence. Odette provided the evidence, accusing Elara of committing a crime. The truth was crystal clear and undeniable. Because Elara had lost her uterus and her body was severely frail, the police planned to wait for her health to recover before taking her into custody. As for Odette, after divorcing Sterling, she had no more ties holding her back. She immediately bought a train ticket and headed south without any hesitation. Punishing Elara was her goal, but it wasn't her ultimate goal. Elara was hateful, but Sterling could hardly deny his responsibility either. Dealing with Elara alone was still not enough. Knowing the future events, Odette understood clearly just how miserable Sterling would become in the near future. Without her help, like in their past life, he would suffer an incredibly tragic ending. She would simply wait and watch Sterling face his karma. After leaving, she poured all her mind and energy into building her career. Knowing the future development trends helped her tremendously. She successfully started from scratch, and in less than 5 years, she had already achieved remarkable success. As a new wave of sweeping economic opportunities transformed the nation, she became the first generation to pioneer the wave of business. The company she founded expanded rapidly. Over 15 years later, she became the wealthiest female billionaire with a massive fortune. She took her money and her team to open branches all over the country, while simultaneously engaging in philanthropy everywhere. She never expected to run into Sterling again during a charity visit to River City. After more than 15 years, Sterling had gone from a majestic, imposing military officer to a disabled man confined to a wheelchair. She stood on the stage giving a speech, while he sat in his wheelchair, looking up at her from below. Their eyes met. She was perfectly calm, while he was shocked and bewildered. She saw Sterling's lips tremble. Although she couldn't hear his voice, she could read his lips. He was clearly mouthing her name. After donating a large sum of money, Odette was preparing to get into her car and leave when Sterling, sitting in his wheelchair, blocked the front of her vehicle. "Odette, do you know that I've been looking for you for a long time?" she asked indifferently. "Why were you looking for me? I never intended to let you go to prison, nor did I plan to divorce you. I was just too angry. I tried my best to persuade Elara to drop the charges against you, but by the time I convinced her, you had already left." Was this supposed to be a belated apology? Even if it was, why should she accept his apology? Seeing her looking at him coldly without saying a word, Sterling's face turned ashen. His lips trembled. "Odette, I didn't know Elara was so despicable and shameless. I was completely deceived by her, which is why I ended up in this state." "Stop talking. I don't care," she said. "Anyway, we are already divorced. I have no interest in your affairs." She stared intently at Sterling, enunciating every word clearly. "Could you please stop blocking my car? I have urgent business. I'm busy going to meet my husband and son. Today is our 6th wedding anniversary." "You're married? You actually got married and even have a child?" With a deathly pale face, Sterling moved his wheelchair out of the way. Her driver started the engine. Just as the car began to roll forward, Sterling suddenly spoke up. "Odette, I had a dream. In that dream, You love me very much, never leaving or forsaking me. We had a son together. Is that so? She rolled down the car window, looking at Sterling with a smile. There were probably other things in that dream, weren't there? For example, you ignoring me because of Elara, or you throwing me into prison because of Elara, or you and that ungrateful son of yours always favoring Elara and humiliating me. Sterling's face turned as pale as snow. She smiled brightly. In your dream, when you achieved a great merit but were in critical condition, was it Elara who knelt down and begged a renowned doctor to snatch you back from the jaws of death? And then you skyrocketed through the ranks, treating her as your lifesaver and being grateful to her for the rest of your life, right? How did you know? Sterling asked in an urgent voice. You don't need to worry about how I know, but I want to tell you one thing. Do you know why, in this life, after you achieved that merit, you had to sit in a wheelchair, unable to stand up? It's because I didn't run hundreds of miles to kneel and beg a medical expert to save you like in that dream. That is why you are crippled. So, in our past life, you were the one who saved me, not Elara. No wonder, he trailed off. Odette let out a cold sneer. Sterling, did you also dream that I contracted a terminal illness and died tragically in prison? What did you think? You must have been very happy, right? After all, only after I died could you rightfully marry your precious Elara. No, it wasn't like that. I didn't know you would die. I thought you were faking your illness. By the time I came back, you had already. I deeply regret it. I regret it so much. Was this supposed to be belated remorse? But what use was it to her? Sterling mumbled, Odette, I know everything was Elara's fault. I didn't let her off the hook. I punished her. She was just recently released and is living a miserable life. Then I can rest easy. Odette rolled up the car window and ordered her driver. Let's go. The car drove off, leaving Sterling in his wheelchair further and further behind until he disappeared from her sight. Looking at his current state, she finally let go of the heavy burden in her heart. In this life, she had no more regrets. The car cruised smoothly down the road. The mobile phone placed next to her started ringing. It was a call from her current husband. She answered the call. Her husband's gentle voice came through the receiver. Odette, our son and I are waiting for you. All right, I'll be right home, she replied. No one could live in the past forever. Sterling had become a thing of yesterday. Now, she had a loving husband and an adorable son. In this life, she would no longer rely on men, nor would she blindly put her trust in them anymore. She wanted to be the queen of her own life.
What an ending! Odette proves that the ultimate revenge is simply moving on, and building a successful life. What would you have done?